All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to LiveFULLy. I've got my positive vibes shirt on tonight because we're going to be talking about vibes. So I usually wear this shirt when I travel because I feel like it brings me like all goodness, like no delayed planes and no traffic jams that make me late for something like that. I'm just like, okay, we're just going to have positive vibes flowing. But I have it on tonight. Because we're going to be talking about emotions and we're going to be talking about vibrations and how that affects our eating habits. So that's why I'm rocking the positive vibes. But anyway, my name is Chris Drabenstadt, and it is Monday, March 5th. I was going to say February. I was like, oh my God. And we've been on hiatus for a couple of weeks. We had a great retreat last week in Fayetteville, North Carolina at Casey Pluff's house. And we also had corporate come in and do a sip and sample, which was super fun. So there was a lot going on last week. And Morgan and I were both, really involved and busy with that. And Jason was there as well. So some of this, Jason, you might have, it'll be kind of familiar to you because we probably talked about some of it at the retreat. But what I want to do first is just show a quick video, and quick meaning like 2 minutes. And then after the video, I just have 2 slides where I want to just kind of introduce the topic, and then we'll just go into discussion and have some discussion about it. So 1 second while I share my screen. I had it already pulled up, but there we go.
What I have found is that 90% of all the pain that we experience is due to trapped emotions, to emotional baggage. I think that this is really the elephant in the living room in Western medicine that we are missing completely.
Our trapped emotions and traumas that we hold in our nervous system are the source of everything that ails us.
What we're finding is that there are these protective mechanisms that help us to overcome and survive these experiences. Actually take these experiences and suppress them, not just in our mind, but in our body.
It's a scientific fact that the chemicals of stress dysregulate our genes that create disease. It's a fact.
And we look for answers. And the problem is that the answers aren't out in our world. They're inside us.
We are not made wrong. We're not broken. We're not missing anything. Every so-called problem of the body is important.
Because if you go down through the layers of those emotions, underneath the very bottom is your true nature, is your peaceful self, your joyous, your playful, your connected self.
We've got to get back to the understanding of the power of the human body to heal itself.
I know this sounds so simple, but if you do it, you will see huge transformation begin to take place in your life.
Imagine living in a world where everyone is actually manifesting from their heart into the world their perfect creation that is inside each of them. That's where we're going.
All right. Whoops. We don't need iTunes. Okay. Are you guys still seeing my screen? Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to show that video because we talked at the retreat a lot about, and we talk a lot on these calls about how our thoughts really matter, you know, that we have our conscious and our subconscious that really drives what we attract into our lives. It also drives, you know, habits. And our emotions are really, you know, these feelings that are attached to situations that we've gone through. And a lot of times they come about from something that has happened many years ago, that now, as you know, like it manifests over time. So, you know, I look at my life, and was just telling somebody this like a few hours ago, that I look at photos of myself when I was like 225, 230 pounds. And I literally, it's like, I don't even recognize who that girl was. And I spent probably close to 20, 25 years looking like that. But it's like, that was not, you know, my true identity. It was just the result of this thing that I was doing, right? And I was overeating because of emotions that I hadn't dealt with, that I didn't know. You know, it's like on you don't really, you know that they're there. I mean, like logically, but you don't realize the power that they have in, you know, every single day, like that you're actually walking around in them, with them, right? And so when you think about, you know, I looked up emotions and obesity, and this first slide here, some of these emotions that it lists: depression, anxiety, binge eating, you know, is not an emotion, but it's an emotion related disorder. And it talks about this cycle about, you know, being overweight actually causes some of these things, and these things cause obesity. So it's just this big circle, you know, that's happening, that it's like, okay, if we're not addressing the emotions that we're in every single day, then, I mean, just think about how difficult this road to health, how much more difficult it is when we're kind of ignoring that, right? When that's the whole cause of the overeating in the first place, or at least a major cause. I won't say the whole cause, because there are, you know, some other medical related issues, but there is a school of thought that there is an emotion that is basically underneath every physical ailment. And so, you know, some of the ones in the second paragraph, you know, reasons why we overeat: depression, hopelessness, anger, boredom. And so when we look at these emotions, I want to pull up this chart. This was something that we looked at the retreat. I think Casey just had them kind of written out, but she's shown this chart before. And this is, you can see the upward spiral from like number 7, you know, moving up through like number 1 is, you know, contentment, hopefulness, optimism, positive expectation and belief, enthusiasm, passion, and then the very one at the top is joy. You know, freedom, love, appreciation. So it's like this high vibrational emotion. And then the downward spiral starts at number 8 and goes all the way down to 22. So there's a lot of them in here, but they're the ones that we just saw in, you know, the paragraph of the article that I pulled up. Boredom, you know, is right there at number 8. Overwhelm, disappointment, doubt. And as you go down, you know, blame, jealousy, unworthiness is 21. And then, you know, fear, grief, depression, the victim mentality down there at number 2. And so here's what we've been talking about. So there's a guy named David Hawkins, and he wrote a book. He wrote many books, and they all are very scientifically based. So it's not woo-woo. It is like kinesiology, like scientific, like what's happening inside your body with vibrations and emotions and your cells, you know, how these emotions are getting stored in your body. And one of his books is called Power versus Force. And what he does is he talks about where each of these emotions actually vibrate on, like, I think it's like hertz is the level of, you know, how it says like HZ, like the measure of like the vibration that these things have. So it's like if you're sitting in anger, you know, which is number 17, it vibrates very low. So like truly, like what I mean is like when you think about like a music tone or something that actually has a vibration, emotions have vibrations behind them. So there's this really, really low vibration, which is why you see people, you know, when you're in that it's just like, ugh, like your face is down and your body, your posture is, you know, hunched over, or like, you know, you're not open and vibrant. When you think about the emotions that are higher vibrating, you know, going all the way up into like, I think love is at like 600 hertz. And then there are actually some above that. And so here's what I wanted to kind of open up for discussion for us is we had a friend of mine, and Jason met her at the retreat. Her name's Jen Valadez. She actually does, is there a chat happening here? Oh, are you not seeing the slides, Mandy?
No, I'm still seeing like the YouTube screen.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can see your cursor move around. I just didn't know if it was just me, so I tried to back out and come back in.
Let me see. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
How about now?
There we go.
Didn't switch over when I switched screens. All right. Well, that'll be a little bit better. Thanks for putting that in the chat. I'm like, I'm missing the chat. Okay. So this was the first thing that I brought up, which was just, you know, just looking up like what some of the emotional causes are. So depression, anxiety, you know, hopelessness, but then really found the same thing on this chart of emotional, the emotional guidance scale. And so all you have to do, if you Google, like emotions and David Hawkins, like these various different charts will come up. Someone else that we studied, a book that's called Ask and It's Given, is by Jerry and Esther Hicks. And that was another book that we talked about at the retreat. They were actually kind of the first ones in 2004 to really put this idea out there about emotions and vibrations. But David Hawkins is really the person who's I think the most well known for the science that's behind it. So he kind of took it and, you know, even a step further. Right? So you can see, this is what I was talking about, is like, you can see the spiral going up, how it gets bigger, right? Like when it spirals around, like the higher the emotion, the bigger the vibration. It's like it opens up, this whole funnel opens up. And on a downward spiral, you can see like even at number 8, like you're just bored, right? You don't think of boredom as being like a super heavy, awful emotion. But even at number 8, which is kind of at the midpoint, I mean, I ate a lot when I was bored, right? Like that emotion is very common for people to overeat. And so then you go down the spiral and look how the funnel gets bigger and bigger, that arrow that's like expanding out, you know, overwhelm, doubt, blame, hatred, revenge, jealousy, and then down at 21, the insecurity. We talked a lot about that unworthiness and, you know, insecurity. I mean, you guys, like that was like most of my life, right? Like I still spend a lot of time there, and it's at the bottom of the barrel. So what the idea is behind this is that it's really not possible for us to go from when you're truly in a state of unworthiness, insecurity, down at the bottom of that spiral, to go from there and automatically like blink your eyes, you know, I dream of Jeannie, bling, I need to get into a state of joy, which is all the way up at the top at number 1. It's like, that's just, it just doesn't happen, right? Like it takes us a minute to kind of file through and like go up some stages. Now, at first I was like, okay, well, if I do find myself feeling unworthy or, low self-esteem, and then I'm like, okay, I need to shift this, right? Like I have the awareness, I've built it, and I'm like, oh, I'm feeling yucky. Like I need to get into a better state, a better emotion. Then I might raise myself up to like just disappointment. That's still a big jump of feeling really, unworthy and insecure, guilt. I feel guilty about something, to saying, you know what, like, I'm disappointed now. Like I'm going to get out of feeling that unworthiness, but maybe I'm just a little disappointed with how I'm feeling. And that actually raised me quite a bit just to feel that. And then maybe you make another jump to, you know what, let me just get into contentment. Let me just be like, I'm not feeling unworthy and that I suck and I can't stick to this nutrition system. And, like, let me just say, I'm okay. I'm all right today. I'm not in a state of joy. I'm not jumping around. I'm not feeling enthusiastic about the shake, or that I'm on my second cleanse day, right? But I'm content. I know what I'm doing. I've got some goals. I'm working on them. So what the idea is, we kind of work our way up the scale, right? So like once you're in contentment, it's just kind of knowing what these are. And so even if it's a benchmark, you don't have to take yourself through all, each one of these emotions one at a time. But just to be aware that it's like being optimistic, right? I'm not doing things perfect, but I think that like I am optimistic that I am going to do a better job this week than I did last week. Just that is like loads better than sitting in, I'm so discouraged. I am so overwhelmed with all of, everything I have to do. And I like this food and I eat this bag of chips and I'm just like, I can't do it. I'm overwhelmed. I can't even think about it. Like just shifting to optimistic is gigantic. So I know that I really struggled with emotions. There were a lot of, and I'm not going to get into the whole like traumas, from the past. But what I do want to say about that is that eating for me, the whole reason, and I think, you guys probably know this, that I started LiveFULLy was from this image that I had of myself filling. And it was after my gastric bypass surgery when I was drinking a ton of wine. I mean, a ton. And I found myself literally like, I didn't even, it was like just this hand to mouth, like drinking, right? So I was like, I'm just like filling my stomach. And I thought about it and I'm like, well, God, that's what I did for 20 years is this filling. What am I trying to fill? Like, what is this empty spot? And really, it wasn't empty. It was these emotions that I never like faced head on and sat down to address. And I talk a lot about Brené Brown and her book, The Gifts of Imperfection. But one of the things that I use all the time is how she talks about like the greatest thing that we can do is own our story and then love ourselves through it. So owning your story means there's some crappy crap on that downward spiral of emotions that like we have to dig into. And I remember being on a plane going to a Follow Your Bliss retreat when we were reading that book. And when some of them really, really hit me hard, I was like bawling, like strangers, sitting next to me. And this book like just brought me to tears because I was like, oh my God, like I really am going to have to face this in order to get to the point where I do feel worthy and I stop beating myself up and I stop going through the self-hatred, being mad at myself, the anger, like all of those things on that big downward spiral, because what do they perpetuate? Eating, obesity, right? Like they're like this. So I'm super passionate about sharing this. And so now I just want us to, chat about it. I want your guys' feedback and like, have you really kind of delved into this? So I started to mention my friend Jen Valadez, who actually does this at like part of her gift is to like spiritual gift is to help people understand what their emotional we have emotions that are actually trapped in our bodies that we just didn't process through. So like if you went through, abuse is a big one. As a child, we bury that. And we don't, whether you are, old enough to know how to emotionally process through or not, it doesn't matter. If you didn't handle it, right, in a healthy emotional way, and it just kind of got pushed down, one of my big ones when I first started working with her was abandonment. And I was like, I was never abandoned. I had like abandoned, think like in my head of like my parents left me. But then when I really started to dig into it, I had all of these relationships where I was attracting, where people were leaving me. And so then I continued to attract those kind of relationships because that was like one of the emotions that I never dealt with. So that turned into eating, right? Because of the relationships that I was finding myself in that was really because of an emotion or multiple emotions that I never dealt with. So it's a little complex, but I want to, stop it here and just open it up to the group and see, number one, like, what do you guys think about all this? Does it make sense? Is there anything that's confusing? Do you have any questions? And then if it does make sense, like, tell me where you are. Like, where do you find yourselves? Are you seeing some of those emotions that look way too familiar that are on that big downward spiral, or not? Let me open it up.
Well, Chris, I thank you for the call tonight. This is a great subject. I'm thinking about my experience with. I had a session with Jan, and I believe she does have a gift because she read me like a book. I mean, I needed help to identify those emotions. Um, I don't know if you've experienced where something just feels a little off, but you can't put your finger on it, and that's just kind of where I've been for a while. And so she was able to point out, and after she said them, I said, yeah, exactly. She named like 3 or 4 of them. One of them pertained, and she was actually able to give me a time frame as to when they originated, which is very interesting to me. It gave me a lot to think about. But one was, I'm not going to share them all, but I'll share one. And it was something with work, um, unappreciated. And I had gone through most of last year, actually, struggling in a work environment that I just, I kept bringing, I had, what do you call, when you're not happy. I can't think there's a better word for it, but I wasn't happy, and I was expressing to my employer what was wrong, but I wasn't getting resolution.
Okay.
And so I think, and when she said it, it all made sense. That was the emotion that I was feeling, was just feeling unappreciated. And um, and then from there I became bitter. And then from there, I started to spread discord. Yeah, exactly. Started going down, down, down. In other words, my bitterness, I started spewing it everywhere. Not right away, because I'm aware that I'm aware that's not a good thing. But at the same time, I reached such a low level, it just started eking out of me, you know. And I actually had to come back and apologize later, and that became my point of recovery. Is actually is to um, seek forgiveness, you know, and and so it's been a climb up. I'm an upward climb, and she would just help me just to simply identify, you know, that's what do I call it, you know, what do I call it, because I can't reverse it if I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
You know,
it's call it out. Exactly. And that's why it's like, I literally, it's crazy. Like for me, I almost have to have those things like up on the wall so I can like identify like what it, because otherwise you're sitting in it, but you don't really, it's like, okay, I feel really, really bad, but like, what is it?
mhm.
Right? Like you're like bitterness, disappointment, you know, frustration, anger, like all of those things. And it's like, where are they? So you can see yourself going down a notch, down a notch, down a notch. And one
Yeah.
of the things too that I think we talked about at the retreat, but that Jerry and Esther Hicks in that book, Ask It Is Given, that they talk about is something called momentum. Right? Like when that emotion that you started with gained momentum because it got bigger and deeper and deeper, and it started turning into something else and something else and something else. Next thing you know, you go to bed, right? You can't sleep. You wake up the next day, you're still pissed, like because it's just like you're still in the funnel. Unless you can like be aware, stop it, and then find your way back up to get into that upward spiral where things start to go, they gain momentum this way. Right? It goes
Yeah.
from, okay, let me just start at content. Let me say, like, let's wipe the slate clean. Like, I'm good. I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm not full of joy or enthusiasm or optimism, right? Like, let me start here. But if that can gain momentum, then like an hour or two later, you can say, let me think about something to be optimistic about. Right? And then a couple of hours later, let me think about something that like really actually kind of excites me, like something that makes me happy. And like you create, like you literally are in control of creating your own momentum going up. Because what happens is when that momentum is going down is where some people fall into addiction, and it can be alcohol, it can be drugs, it can be, you know, like for this group, it's food. But like knowing that as like we're going through our journeys, as we're helping other people go through their journeys, these emotions have to be explored, right? And like understood at a really basic level, because that's what pulls us. It's like, I had a bad weekend. Well, that's a really vague thing to say. What exactly made it, like, what was bad? And I'm serious, like doing this in the coaching, if someone says like, I totally tanked. Why? What can you think of what the moment was? Well, I went and I had like cupcake day, right? I went to his birthday party, I had cupcakes and okay, what was it that caused the cupcakes? Like, let's even, you know, like back it up. Like, how did you feel going to the birthday party? Well, I was a little worried I was going to eat cupcake. Okay, worry. Did you see how far down worry is? Like, and no wonder you ate all the cupcakes, because you went into it at worry. Like, that's blah, right? So it sounds like, for me, it was one of those, like, this sounds too simple. It's like so simple, it's complex. Like, oh my God, like had I just gone into the party feeling optimistic that I didn't have to have the cupcakes, versus I'm afraid and worried that I'm going to have them, it probably could have been a totally different birthday party for me. Right? But I just let it happen. I wasn't aware. I went into it and like, but when you think about it, and so that's where I go back to Brene Brown, own your story. Like it hurts sometimes. You're like, oh man, I'm going to tell you exactly what it was. And it is not pretty. But unless you do, we do this unconscious thing where we're sitting in these emotions and we're not even paying attention to them until the momentum, then we pay attention, but by then we're at the bottom. It's like stopping a car that's going down the hill. It's a lot easier to stop it when it's up here than when it gets all the way to the bottom of the hill. It's like it's got way too much speed at that point. Okay, I'm sorry to cut you off. I just had to get that in.
That was really good. I just was thinking at one point I actually had to out loud tell myself those thoughts kept coming up. Anger about work, anger about how I was justified in feeling the way I felt, and how, why can't they just listen, and on and on and on. I finally just had to tell myself out loud, just stop. I mean, I had to get anger, I had to use that anger, and I had to direct it in a constructive way. And I told myself out loud in my house, stop it, just stop it. And faith comes by hearing. So you can change your belief. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes you got to speak to yourself. You got to speak the truth to yourself. You can listen to the lies that run through your head. It's like Pastor Ron says, you can't control the thoughts that come and go, but you can control the ones that come and stay. So, yeah, he said all these thoughts will,
Go ahead.
all these thoughts, good and bad, will run through your head all day long. But you're the watchman of the gate. In other words, your gate is your heart. So you gotta be diligent about that.
I work with a spiritual coach, and I remember one time saying that I was angry about something, that I was really like, facing like where I was, like, well, this is what I'm hearing, like, can you pinpoint it? And I'm like, well, I thought about it, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm angry, and she's like, good. Like, I'm like, what do you mean good? And she's like, you're not gonna not get angry in life. Like, things are gonna happen, right? Like, that cause you to be angry. The idea is notice it, like, call it out, and like, just like you said, stop. Okay, not fine. Like, I've admitted I'm angry. Now let's go back up. Let's go back up the spiral. It doesn't have to be to joy, right? I'm angry. I don't go straight to like, oh, I'm in bliss. I feel like tingles all over. I'm so happy. Like, that doesn't happen. But I can go from anger to, okay, I'm optimistic that I've identified what this is and that I'm going to come up with a solution. I just took like an 8-step jump just in that, right? Who else?
Yeah, I was looking at that spiral, and I just can so relate because, I'll be at maybe frustration, something with work, and then things build up, and so I'm feeling overwhelmed, and then I start to worry, and then I get discouraged, and then, I just tank. And I really liked what Jason said about verbally saying it out loud, because you can say it in your head, and I'm like, oh, come on, Mandy. But I just think for me, it's so powerful to just say it out loud. And, to hear myself say it, not just, I'm saying it internally. So yeah, I really don't have much to say on this, but I really liked what Jason said about, you just had to stop and just verbalize it and get it out there. And then, just once you hear it and it's audible, then you're like, okay, I can do this, just get back on track.
And don't you, like, maybe it's just me. I don't think it is, but I'll just say that just in case anybody's like, no, I'm not like that. Where even after you've identified it, you still feel like sitting in it. It's like, what is that about, right? Like, it's like, like you feel crappy and want to feel crappy. And, you could go do something about it, but you're like, I don't want to. It's like this little, like a little kid, and it's like when you do say it out loud, it sounds really ridiculous when you're like, all right, am I going to stay here? Because what sense does that make? I mean, it feels good because it feels normal, right? Like we're like, well, this is what I do. And it feels nice down here at the bottom of the spiral because we've spent a lot of time there. Like, so it's normal. Like our subconscious, like the only job for our subconscious is to keep things normal. It just doesn't like change. So of course, when we say stop, I'm angry, but stop, we want to change that. Your subconscious is like, nah, let's hang out down here. But that's where it's got to be like, no, like we are the masters, like they showed in that video, like we are in control, or we can be. So it's just a matter of calling it out, like bringing it to the surface and then doing something about it.
Yeah. And you had said something earlier too about how you just it's the vicious cycle of it, so I get to a point and maybe I have, I don't know, a weakness, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to go cram my face full of something unhealthy, junk food, pop, whatever. And then I feel really terrible and I'm like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that. And then I come back around and I'm like, well, I'm already feeling terrible. What's it going to hurt? So I'm just going to do it some more. And, and so it's just, I go around and around with the feeling bad and then the eating or drinking something to make myself feel better. But then it just makes me feel worse. And I'm like, well, I'm already here. So I might as well just keep enjoying myself, So it's just, it's like, yeah, I'll just keep going. Just
the hamster wheel and the revolving door. It's like, pick your analogy. It's just like, wow. And it's like, when you start to build awareness, it gets so annoying, right? Until like, that's why like that she had that moment. Well, she's had that moment, a gajillion times, but it was back onto the wheel, back through the revolving door until you're so tired of it. Like you can say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it's like, well, unless that moment has happened, and it's different for everybody when it comes. But the more, we're doing this personal development, working on yourself and your thoughts and your emotions, like the faster you're likely to have that light switch moment that's like, I am so sick and tired of doing the circle. That it's just like, you just will not do it anymore. And then it's 10 pounds. And then it's will not do it. And then it's 20. And then it's like, someone's like, oh my God, how'd you do it? And there's no, like, she's talked about how many people have reached out to her in that 100 pounds saying like, how'd you do it? What's your secret? Like, what's your recipe? What's the secret? And it's like, it is your mind. Like like you put the right nutrition in your body, but your mind is what keeps you on track to doing it. And the more aware we can be about our ability to impact that, the more successful we're going to be. And I just like in this Ice a Body challenge, like, oh my God, I don't know if you guys have seen it, like the way that I started 16 weeks ago and now, in just 16 weeks, I've only lost 6 pounds. 6. You can lose 6 in a cleanse. My body is totally different than it was 16 weeks ago. And it's like when I talk to people about this, the scale, you talk about emotions. What's that do? When you get on this, right? You get on the scale, that can take you down to disappointment and way past frustration. And like now you're down in unworthiness, like just from jumping on that thing. But, you know, so like those non-scale victories, the celebrating, you know, the 2 pounds, even when you can't see it, like I know something is happening, like my body composition is changing, I do look different, you know, taking photos because you can actually see, and then feeling the emotion to say, I can see a difference, doggone it. It might only be 5 pounds, but like, who cares about the scale? Like, that's optimistic of like, it was 5 this week, I think it's going to be 5 next week, and that's going to be 10. And that's good. It's not 100 all at once. It's not joy of like, I'm size, whatever size I want to be. It's 10, right? Like it's the increments that then it becomes the massive wins. But it feels a little bit easier getting there because we're not spending as much time down in the bottom of that big spiral, that big funnel that's like, ugh. What else? All right. Well, and if you're struggling with your own energy, we have e-shots, we have Nitro, we have Ionics. I mean, honestly, it's like put the stuff in your body that's going to help you, you know, raise that vibration even when it gets kind of tough, you know, doing it on your own. And no, I just think the awareness in it, you know, in and of itself is just so powerful, because that's when we can start to really, you know, like I said, let's not be unrealistic jumping from the bottom of the bottom funnel up to the top of the top. Yeah. Hi, David.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yay, I made it.
Yay. We were just talking about David Hawkins, and we were talking about emotions and vibrations and the spirals. So the downward spiral and the upward spiral, and how to start managing our emotions. So that's what we've been talking about tonight. But I think we might be coming up to an early close. If anybody else has any comments on it, was it helpful? Was it interesting? Yeah.
It's definitely helpful. Chris, I wanted to say something.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've joined this crew, and I just wanted to say hi. I'm on here supporting one of my teammates, and she's in the background. I know she's pretty busy, and she's got 2 little boys, but she's listening in. And Kelsey, hi. I'm glad you joined us tonight. I just wanted to say thanks for letting me listen in, and you guys are awesome. I want her to be able to feel supported, so I think that this is a great place to come and join in. So thanks for offering what you do, and you guys are great.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and I just want to echo that. This is my 3rd or 4th, and I wasn't as vocal tonight as sometimes I can be. But Kelsey, my first week that I joined in here, it was just such a comfortable environment, and just to know that I was surrounded by very caring and like-minded individuals that had gone through and are still going through the same things that I go through. It was just nice to know that that support is here. So we are here for you and each other, and so very glad that you're joining tonight.
Yeah, welcome. And we are, typically here every Monday at 8 o'clock. We Zoom, and it's for anybody. It's open for people that are Isagenix users or not. And I just thought, I mean, obviously the spirals, that we looked at as far as like all the different emotions, it's applicable to anybody, right? Like not just people who overeat. But when I saw those emotions that are related, directly related to the, emotional overeating and obesity, and looked at where, they're all down there on the bottom of that big spiral of the downward spiral. I just, for me, it was just this gigantic, aha, that it's like, my eating is not a flaw. It's not something bad about myself, or that I'm not doing right, or, like I spent so much time like beating myself up over the eating, and it's not the eating, it's the emotions, right? Like the eating is just like, that's what we do. And so some people, when they go down into worry and fear and disappointment and all those emotions that are at the bottom of that spiral, some people do other things. They don't, like, eating is not their gig, right? Like it's not that they don't experience that, or that we're, overeaters are like so unique. Like food is just our thing. Like it's just our go-to. So, I wanted to, call that out. It's like this, we're not special. We just like, that's what we like to do is eat. And so I just wanted to really shine a spotlight on, these emotions, and the ones that are so closely related to obesity and overeating, that, depression and all of that, that if you, are finding yourself there, think about these spirals and like print it out, like this will be, I'll put the slides in the group, or, list the emotions, and like just, or Google it and print it out. Because knowing what those things are, like I said, for me, I know what ones are at the bottom. Maybe I pick, one or two up the scale, one that's kind of neutral, and then, one at the top. I don't need to memorize 22 in order, right? But I can have those kind of benchmarks of like, let me make a couple jumps this hour, right? And then like by lunchtime, let me see if I can take contentment up to optimism. Right? And then I'm going to sit in optimism for a while. I'm just optimistic that the rest of this day is going to go okay. And at least I'm not in overwhelm. So, and hopefully it's useful as a tool. And yeah, Jason, go ahead.
I was thinking back to what I said earlier. Our relationships are so much a part of who we are, and impact have such a huge impact on who we are, and what we become. We were created that way. I believe we're created that way, to be relational. Um, it is written that mankind is not meant to be alone. So, but I was thinking back to my work relationship. The turning point was for me personally, was to begin the restoration process of that relationship with my employer, and to seek forgiveness for my attitude. That was one of the things I mentioned at the retreat. I said sometimes truth can be offensive, and my employer said something to me that it was offensive, but then I had to think, and I said, well, maybe there's some truth to it. So I could turn and run away from it, but if it's true, I should be running toward it. So I really had to think on it, and then came to the realization there was some truth to it. And the only resolution that I know is actually to seek forgiveness. And for me, forgiveness is one of the keys to restoration of relationship. And it's a foundation in the I really don't see how we can live without forgiveness.
Yeah, and I want to just like say something really quick before we jump off about forgiveness. I either read or heard somewhere that the happiest people, that in studies that have been done on happiness, the happiest people in the world are this group of like or a community that is really full of like Buddhist monks. And I don't know how they measured it, but when they were interviewed, they were asked, you know, like, why, what makes you so happy? Why are you so happy? And their answer was radical forgiveness is what caused this elated emotional state of this like happiness, love, joy, you know, up at the top, freedom, appreciation. Like the forgiveness actually catapulted them up there where they like tested out or measured out like the happiest people on earth was like, because that was the number one thing that they said that they did that caused that happiness. And so it may not be there in the beginning, right? Like when you have to like, and think about forgiveness for ourselves, for the cupcake day, like just go from feeling unworthy to forgiving it. And you're already on your way up that positive spiral, like just to forgive it, let it go. Like, you know, that happened, but that's okay. I forgive you and I love you. And we're just going to learn from that and be optimistic and work our way up to joy somehow. But yeah, forgiveness is just, oh my goodness, it's just gigantic because how can you, it's kind of like what I talked about at the retreat about judgment. That judgment can't exist. Like you lose your ability to influence. It wasn't at the retreat. It was at the sip and sample. You lose your ability to influence people when you're judging them. Like they just can't happen at the same time. Like if I'm judging you, I have zero power to influence you because I'm already like, it's already out the window. I'm already judging you, right? So same thing with forgiveness. If you're like in the midst of forgiving yourself, like how can you be mad at yourself? How can you be in anger or hatred when you're like, I forgive you? It's like, poof, it's gone, you know, like that fast. So I love that you brought that up. Anything else, guys?
It's been a good session. Good session.
I'll say something really quick here. I was reading on Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah.
And he talks about when you combine feeling and emotion, like when you have a negative emotion, to think of the opposite. And it kind of helped me today because, you know, when we have something negative, what's the opposite of that? And it puts me in that vibrational state to be able to appreciate it. Forgiveness is part of it. Gratitude is part of it. And ultimately appreciating the situation, even though it may not be good, because that's the only place that we can be creative. When we're not in the spot of forgiveness or gratitude, we're not in creation. We're in destruction. And it was really interesting. It really helped me out today because I've been going through some stuff, restarting the journey again. Chris, you and I have talked about it. You know, I've gained some weight back, and I could be totally like beating myself up. But I'm like, you know what? Let me look back at my past. Let me be grateful that I have a system that I can get back on real quick, and let me forgive myself for where I fell off. And yeah, I reached out to my friends Jeff and Debbie, and they helped point me right back in the right direction. And I'm grateful, you know, and that's the beautiful piece because now I'm creating that energy again. And so we just have to look for the opposite when we're in that low energy spot.
Yeah, it looks like you're frozen. Are you still there? Okay. It's just the camera. All right. Well, thank you for that. Absolutely. And you know,
Sure.
I was going to go back to the spiral, like appreciations up at the top of the positive spiral. So yeah, just being grateful and appreciating. It's like you're on the whole opposite end of the spectrum as far as depression and all that stuff, unworthiness. So I love it. And I did see your post on Facebook. So congrats for recommitting and putting it out there. I love being accountable, owning your story. We talked about that before you jumped on the call, but we've talked about it many times on LiveFULLy, how important it is just to own your story. And that is it for tonight, my friends. So we got a team call to jump on right now. And like I said, feel free to tag other people on the recordings if you feel like it was good or it would be beneficial. And let's think about our emotions this week. All right. Have a good night and a good week, everybody.